You pull into the office parking lot at 8:47 in a 2014 Honda Civic with 189,000 miles on it. The driver's seat has a coffee stain you've given up on. The hubcap on the back passenger side has been missing since March. The guy 2 spaces over just got a brand new Tesla. He sees your car, gives you the small nod people give when they've already decided who you are, and walks past. He has $4,000 in his checking account and owes $78,000 on that car. You have $2.4 million in assets he cannot see. A brokerage account he's never heard of. A rental property 2 towns over that pays your mortgage. And you're sitting here in the parking lot in the Civic, deciding whether to grab the coffee you made at home so you don't spend the $6 at the shop. This is not a coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is a strategy. And it's the single most powerful, least understood decision in all of personal finance. This is what it looks like to look poor at every level of wealth. And why the people who never stop looking poor are the ones nobody ever sees coming. Let's start at the bottom, because this is where it hurts the most, and this is where most people quit. You have $3,000 in savings. Maybe not even that. You make $36,000 a year. Your check engine light has been on for 4 months. You've learned exactly which hills you can push the car and which ones it'll make on its own. At this level, looking poor isn't a choice. It's just the truth. And that truth is exhausting in a way nobody talks about, because you don't have the money to hide anything. You have to live the thing out loud. The lunches you don't buy. The trips you can't go on. I'm busy that weekend text you send when you're actually just broke. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about this level. The discomfort you're feeling right now is the most valuable asset you will ever own. Because you still know what money feels like when it's gone. You haven't fooled yourself into thinking comfort is safety. You haven't confused the appearance of money with the thing itself. Your coworker Marcus gets a $500 bonus and immediately buys himself a watch. Not a nice watch. A $500 watch. He puts it on at his desk. He shows everyone. He goes to lunch and holds his wrist up like he's a different person. You get the same $500 bonus, and you put it in a savings account that pays you 4.3%. At the end of the year, that $500 has made you $21.50. Nobody congratulates you. Nobody even knows. Marcus's watch is worth $200 by next spring. Your $521.50 is still growing. This is the first rule of looking poor. It is not a lifestyle. It is a weapon. And right now, at $3,000 in savings, you're the one person in this office who still knows what the weapon is for. Because the people who look poor and hate it are the ones who will blow it all the second they get money. And the people who look poor and understand it are the ones who will never need to look rich. You're not at the second level yet, but you're closer than you think. Because the moment your savings crosses $50,000, something changes. And it changes whether anyone can see it or not. You are 32. You have $52,000 invested. It's not in your checking account. In a brokerage account, in index funds, in things your friends have never heard of and wouldn't understand if you showed them. You drive the same 2014 Honda, same coffee stain, same missing hubcap. And now, for the first time, people are starting to ask questions. Not about your money, about you. Why don't you get a new car? Why are you still in that apartment? You've been at that company 5 years. When are you going to move up? The question isn't about the car. It's about the gap between what they think you have and what they think you should have. And that gap right there is the whole game. Here's what's happening at $50,000. You could buy a new car. You could, if you wanted, walk into a dealership today and drive out in something. That changes how the valet looks at you. You've done the math, and that's exactly why you don't. Because here's what nobody shows you on social media. The person driving the new car is paying for it. The person driving the old car is getting paid for it. The difference between those two lives, the freedom, the sleep, the ability to say no, is not visible in any parking lot on earth. Your cousin Dana just bought a house, $340,000 house. She posts the keys, the closing table, the whole thing, 40 comments, fire emojis. So proud of you. You show up at the housewarming, and it's beautiful. New furniture, new appliances, a kitchen island that probably costs more than your car is worth. What nobody posts is that Dana put $8,000 down, financed the rest at 6.8%, and every single piece of furniture in that living room is on a credit card she's been carrying a balance on for 2 years. Dana doesn't look poor. Dana looks like she made it. And Dana is one layoff away from losing all of it. You, on the other hand, have $52,000 in the market, $8,000 in cash, 0 debt, and you still have the hubcap missing. This is the second rule of looking poor. At the level where you could finally look rich, looking rich is the most expensive thing you can buy, and it's the one purchase that never appreciates. The people who understand this are rare, and they are about to separate from everyone they know, because at $250,000, the separation becomes visible. Not to them, to you. And that's the level where most people make the mistake that costs them the next 20 years. You are 38. $250,000. And here's the part that surprises you. At $50,000, you were hungry. At $250,000, you're tired. Not tired. From work? Tired from keeping the secret? Because now the gap between what you have and what you look like is big enough that people are starting to feel it. They can't see your account, but they can feel something. They don't know what it is. Your brother-in-law Michael corners you at a family barbecue. He's had 2 beers. He's talking about his new truck, how much it costs, how he's living the dream. And then he says it. It's a sentence that changes everything. You know, I always thought you'd be farther along. You smile. You say nothing. And you think about the number. In your brokerage app, the number that could, this afternoon if you wanted, buy Michael's truck, his house, and his retirement, and not feel it. You say nothing. Because saying something would cost you the one thing that's harder to get back than money. Anonymity. And you have learned at 38 that anonymity is not hiding. Anonymity is power. It's the power to watch everyone else negotiate against the version of you that doesn't exist. Here's what's actually happening at this level. Compound interest has started to do the heavy lifting. At $250,000, at a boring 8% average, comes $540,000 in 10 years without you contributing another dime. The money is starting to work. And the money working is the loneliest thing that ever happened to you, because nobody can see it. Not your wife's family, not your high school friends, not the guy in the parking lot. You can't tell them, because the second you tell them, the questions start. The can I borrow starts. The you should invest in my thing starts. And the version of you they loved, the one who was relatable, the one who was struggling just like them, disappears overnight.
Ow.
This is the third rule of looking poor. At $250,000, looking rich costs you your money. At $500,000, looking rich costs you your safety. And at $1 million, looking rich costs you your peace. The higher you climb, the more expensive the costume gets. And the people who keep wearing it, the people who can't stand the idea of being underestimated, they pay for it with something they can never buy back. Time, trust, and the quiet. Freedom of being left alone. At $1 million, most people break. They've been patient. They've been quiet. They've been driving the Civic. And then one day the account hits 7 figures, and they buy the thing. The car. The house. The Rolex. Because they want someone, anyone, to finally see what they did. This is the moment the whole game changes. And this is where you learn that the people who break at $1 million and the people who don't are about to live 2 entirely different lives. You are 44. You have crossed $1 million. You didn't buy the car. You want to. Understand how rare that is. In America, roughly 18 million households have a net worth of $1 million or more. Almost all of them, every single one you've ever met, you can't tell. Because the ones who can't help themselves, the ones who need the world to know, they bought the thing. And the thing bought their peace of mind in return. You kept the Civic. But something else changed at $1 million that nobody warned you about. Your money started making more than you do. Your salary is $95,000 a year. You work 45 hours a week for it. Last year, your investments made $81,000. You did nothing. You slept. You drove the Civic, and your portfolio made almost as much as your full-time job without a single email. The morning you realize, this is the morning you start doing math you've never done before. It's not the math of your paycheck. The math of your freedom. How many years of this job do I actually need? What does the number have to be before the job is optional? And how do I get there without anyone in this office, this family, this life, knowing what's actually happening? Here's where the level by level thing gets interesting. Because at $1 million, you look poor to everyone who knows you. But you've started to notice that the people who look rich to you, the ones with the houses and the cars and the vacations, they don't actually seem happier. They seem like they're performing. Like they're running the same race you left, just wearing better shoes. You meet a man at a conference. He's 61. He's wearing a suit that costs more than your entire wardrobe. He's got a watch that costs more than your car. He's talking loudly about his portfolio, his properties, his team. And then, over drinks, he tells you something that stops you. Cold. Honestly. I'd trade it all to have 20 years back. You think about the Civic, the coffee stain, the hubcap, and you realize for the first time that you have something he will never have again. Not money, time he spent. His 20s and 30s buying the right to look successful. You spent yours buying the right to be left alone. And at $2 million, at $3 million, at $5 million, that distinction becomes the entire difference between a life that looks good and a life that is good. This is the fourth rule of looking poor. The wealthiest looking person in the room is almost never the wealthiest person in the room. The wealthiest person in the room is the one nobody is looking at. And the reason nobody's looking at them is the exact reason they're wealthy. Because here's the thing about money. Money loves quiet, it grows in quiet, it compounds in quiet. The second it has to perform, the second it has to prove itself with a car or a house or a lifestyle, it starts leaking through the car payment, through the upkeep, through the people who suddenly want to be around you, through the one cousin who calls every 6 months to ask how business is. At $5 million, you have learned to be invisible. And being invisible at $5 million is worth more than being famous at $50 million, because nobody's asking you for anything. Nobody's pitching you. Nobody's jealous of you. And the people who are jealous of you don't even know you exist. But there's one more level. And it's the level that nobody talks about. Because at $10 million, the game changes again. And it changes in a way that has nothing to do with money. You are 51, and you have crossed $10 million. Let's be clear about what that actually is. $10 million, at a conservative 4%, generates $400,000 a year, forever, without you lifting a finger. You could stop today. You could never work again. And you would be richer in 20 years than you are now, doing absolutely nothing. And you are still driving a Civic. Well, not the same Civic. You finally replaced it when the transmission went at 240,000 miles. You bought a used Toyota. It's 2019. Silver. The most forgettable car ever manufactured. It gets you everywhere. Nobody looks at it. That is the entire point. At $10 million, something strange has started happening. You've stopped caring what people think. Not the practiced not caring of a 20-year-old pretending to be above it all. The real, earned, bone-deep not caring of a man who has watched everyone else trade their peace for applause and got nothing back. Your net worth is more than the combined net worth of every single person you grew up with. It's more than your parents, more than your siblings, more than every coworker you've ever had, and none of them know. None of them have ever suspected, because you've spent 30 years building the most elaborate disguise in the world. The disguise of being ordinary. This is the level where most people who've made it finally crack, because at $10 million, the audience disappears. The people who'd applaud your success, the ones who'd finally see the Civic and understand what it meant, they're gone. They died, or they moved on, or they never understood in the first place. And you realize, standing in the grocery store with a coupon, that you've won the game, and nobody is keeping score anymore, and that's when the real test begins. Because there are two kinds of people who reach $10 million in silence. The first kind built the disguise because they were afraid. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of being exposed. Afraid that if people knew what they had, they'd lose it. They looked poor because they're hiding. The second kind built the disguise because they were free. They never needed the world to know. They did the math. They understood that the life they wanted, the quiet, boring, unphotographed, nobody knows life, was actually the reward. And they stopped performing so long ago that they forgot they were ever performing at all. Here's how you tell the difference. Ask them what they'd do if everyone found out. The first kind panics. The second kind shrugs. Because the second kind didn't build this life to be seen. They built it to be lived. And at $10 million, you realize that the people who made it and then bought the yacht, the people who finally let the world see, they did it because they were still performing. They needed the validation they never got as a kid. And no amount of money, no boat, no house, no watch will ever be enough to fill that hole. You, on the other hand, are sitting in your used Toyota at a red light, listening to the radio, and you feel something that no amount of money can buy. You feel done. Not done in a sad way. Done in a complete way. The game is over. You won. And the scoreboard, the one nobody else can see, says everything you need it to say. But here's the part nobody warns you about. The part that makes $10 million harder than $50,000. You are 55, and you've discovered that looking poor forever has a cost. And it's not the one you think. It's not that people think you're broke. You stopped caring about that years ago. It's not that you can't enjoy your money. You can, quietly, on your own terms, in ways nobody sees. That part is actually fine. The cost is the loneliness. And it's real, and nobody talks about it. And it's the reason so many quiet millionaires eventually break. You've spent 30 years building a life where nobody can see you. At some point, you realize that nobody can see you. Not just your money. You. The real version of you. The one who did the impossible. Who built a fortune. In silence, who beat a system designed to keep you poor. Nobody knows that person exists. Your wife knows you have money. She's known for years. But even she doesn't know the full number. And you've both agreed to keep it that way because you've seen what full disclosure does to families. The expectations. The assumptions. The way a number can change how a son looks at his father. Your kids think you're comfortable. They have no idea you could fund their entire lives, and their kids' lives, and their kids' kids' lives. And you've made the deliberate choice to let them think that, not out of cruelty, out of a desperate hope that they'll learn what you learned the hard way. That money you don't have to think about, money you have to build yourself, means more than money you're handed. So you sit alone most nights with your coffee, and you run the numbers the way you have for 30 years, and you realize you've won the game. And nobody in the world knows it. And this is the moment the story usually ends. The quiet millionaire, the old Toyota, the contented smile. But there's one more beat, and it's the beat that changes everything. Because at 55, you realize something that all the level-by-level advice in the world never mentions. You didn't look poor to hide from the world. You looked poorer because you were protecting something, and you're finally going to find out if it was worth it. The phone rings. It's your daughter. She's crying. She's 29. She's just been laid off. She has a lease, a car payment, and $2,000 in savings. She's scared. She doesn't know what to do. And she has no idea that her father could solve this in a phone call, that he could make her problems disappear with a transfer that would mean nothing to him. And you sit there, holding the phone in your used Toyota, in your quiet house that nobody knows is paid off, and you have to decide. Do you finally let her see? Do you finally let the secret out? Do you spend 30 years of invisible wealth to give your daughter the one thing money was always supposed to buy? Not the money, the peace. And you realize in that moment that looking poor was never the point. Being poor was never the point. The point was always this. When it finally mattered, when someone you loved was scared and had nowhere to turn, you would have the answer. You would have the number. And you would not have to perform or prove or explain or justify. You would just be there. You tell her to come over. You tell her to bring coffee. And when she walks in, still crying, you sit her down at the kitchen table, the same table where you did the math 30 years ago that changed your whole life, and you tell her the truth. Not all of it. Not yet. But the truth about the Civic, about the coffee stain, about the hubcap, about why her father always looked like he was struggling even when he wasn't. And you watch her face change. The way you hoped it would change, and you realize that this moment, this is the whole reason you did it. Not the money, not the freedom. This is what looking poor was actually for. So let's bring it home. Let's name the final rule, because it's the one nobody on the internet will ever sell you. Looking poor is not about the money. Looking poor is about understanding that the only person who needs to know what you're worth is you. It's about refusing to trade your freedom for applause, your safety for a costume, your peace for a parking lot of people who don't care about you. The richest people you will ever meet, the truly free ones. The ones who sleep at night and say no without guilt and watch everyone else perform for a crowd that isn't even paying attention. They all learn the same thing. The thing you just learned. The game was never about looking rich. The game was about being free. And the two are not the same. They have never been the same. And the people who figure out the difference, the ones who drive the old car with the fortune nobody can see, they're not hiding from the world. They've simply stopped performing for it. You don't need to look rich. You don't need to prove anything to a parking lot. You need to look exactly like what you are. A person who understands the game so completely that they no longer have to play it. And that right there is the wealth they have no idea you have. If this one landed, you already know the next video in this series. It's one about what happens after you finally tell your daughter after. The secret is out, after everyone knows. It's a different kind of test, and I'll link it right here. But before you go, I want you to answer one question honestly. It's not to me, to yourself. Which level were you on when you started this video? Which level are you trying to reach? Because the person who can answer that question is already ahead of everyone who can't. Thanks for watching Peak Ledger. Same time with next video. And remember, they have no idea.